When you first connect Power BI to a SQL server, an Azure SQL database, or any of these sources, it asks you to choose between import and direct query. For a lot of people, that's the first, wait, what do I pick moment in Power BI? And honestly, it is a really important choice. It affects how your model performs, what features you can use, and how fun or frustrating Power BI can feel later on. So in this video, we'll talk about what import and direct query actually mean, the trade-offs between them, and how to decide which one's right for your project. I'm Avi Singh, a Power BI Microsoft MVP, and through my online program on learnpowerbi.com, I have helped thousands of business users master Power BI and build beautiful reports. So let's start with what these two options actually mean. Import mode means Power BI goes to your data source, makes a copy of the data, and stores it inside your model. Now you might be thinking, my data is too big. Well, Power BI is incredibly good at data compression. I remember the days when I would get nervous about hitting 1,000,000 rows, the limit in Excel. But in Power BI, I routinely bring in hundreds of millions of rows and don't even think twice about it. Now, exactly how much compression you get, whether it's 10x or 100x, depends a lot on your data modeling skills. And if you want to learn how to model your data properly, I have my free data modeling guide linked in the description. So that's import mode. It copies the data and compresses it. Now, direct query works differently. With direct query, Power BI doesn't store the data in your model at all. Every time you or a report user interact with your report, click a slicer, apply a filter, refresh a visual, Power BI goes back to the original source and runs a query there. And of course, that has consequences. So let's talk about the trade-offs and how to choose between direct query and import. Now, what I say next might sound like I really don't like direct query. And that's true. But there is one scenario where you can and perhaps should use direct query. So make sure to watch till the end. If you've followed our data modeling guide, you already know that in Power BI, the default relationship type is one-to-many single directional. Anything else, bidirectional or many-to-many, those are exceptions and need to be justified. Now, I want you to take that same mindset and apply it here. In Power BI, import should be your default, your natural choice. Power BI was originally built around import mode. The Word2Pack engine, the in-memory model that powers everything, was created back in 2009 and introduced as Power Pivot, only supported import. Direct query didn't even exist until 2015. So direct query is the exception that needs to be justified. And we would talk about those specific scenarios. But short version, especially if you're a beginner, go with import. But if you watch the rest of the video, you'll understand why that's the case. Now, there are two seemingly obvious scenarios where people think direct query is the right answer. But is it? Let's find out. The first scenario is large data sets. So if your data is big, you might think, I don't want to import all those rows into Power BI. Let's just use direct query. And you can. But there is a price you pay for that direct query mode, and we'll talk about that later on. So I want to share 3 techniques that can help you work with large data sets and still keep it in import mode. First, use automatic refresh. On PowerBI.com, you can schedule your data set to refresh multiple times a day, up to 8 on a Pro license and even more on Premium. So even if your refresh takes 30 minutes or an hour, it doesn't really matter. It happens automatically in the background. When users open the report, they're seeing fresh data without anyone needing to do anything. Second, use incremental refresh. This is a big one. Instead of reloading the entire dataset every time, incremental refresh only updates the new or changed data and keeps the rest as is. That means you can work with very large historical datasets, but your refreshes stay quick and efficient. And third, take advantage of Power BI's incredible data compression you've talked about. I have worked with Power BI models up to about 1 GB in size, and you can go higher as well. And if you're following all the best practices for data modeling, that means the source data could be hundreds of gigabytes in size and would be compressed in Power BI. Now, the second scenario where people often think direct query is when they need real-time data. And that's true. With direct query, you do get that because every time someone interacts with the report, Power BI goes back to the database. So any new transactions or updates, you will see them right away in your visuals. But again, I would make a case for sticking with the import here too. Because as I said, there is a price for direct query mode, and we'll talk about that next. But if you need real time, you can get near real time in the import mode, and often that's good enough. With the Pro license, you can refresh your dataset up to 8 times a day. And honestly, for 95% of my clients, that's been more than enough. You can go premium or premium per user and push that to a 48 refreshes a day. That means you can refresh every 30 minutes if you spread it across a day, or even every 15 minutes if you only need it during business hours. And the tip, if your refreshes are taking too long, consider incremental refresh. So we talked about the price you pay for direct query, and it's really two things: performance and limitations. Let's start with performance. Direct query is slow, sometimes painfully slow. Import models are snappy. Click a slicer, visuals update instantly. That's how Power BI is meant to feel. But direct query, every click has to go back to the source, and that adds up fast. Microsoft even tries to set your expectations. Their official direct query documentation kind of says that it can take from 5 to 30 seconds for visuals to refresh. In import model, I try to keep that to 1 second or less. And then you start running into limitations. Again, Microsoft's official documentation talks about Power Query limitations, modeling limitations, and tells you to avoid complex Power Query queries and keep measures simple. But here's the thing, Power Query and DAX are the heart of Power BI. If I have to hold back just to keep the model working, what's the point? So that's the cost of direct query: slower performance and limitations. So I think I've beaten up on direct query quite enough now, but I did promise that there's one scenario where you can and perhaps should use direct query. And that's when you're using a composite model, sometimes called a hybrid model. This was introduced later on in Power BI's evolution, and it's honestly a really smart addition. So even though import should remain your default, you might run into cases where one or a few tables really do make sense in direct query mode. For example, maybe you've got one huge table that's just too large to load into memory. Or maybe there's one table where you truly need real-time updates. In those situations, you don't have to flip your whole model to direct query. You can keep everything else in import mode and make that one table direct query. That way you get the best of both worlds: the speed and flexibility of import for most of your data, and the real-time or large volume benefits of direct query only where it's needed. Regardless of the choice you make, import, direct query, or a composite model, you should always follow data modeling best practices. It's what gives you a cleaner, more usable model that scales well and stands the test of time as your model grows. Click below to grab my free data modeling guide. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and power on. Hey, but before you go, here's a slice of life. This is a photo from a road trip to Sedona. I was visiting my son down in Phoenix, and we took this trip together, and all I can say is I can't wait to go back there again.